mail, and it has nothing to do with the United States Postal Service, and you're going to figure out what it has to do with here in a little bit. And we're going to look today. We're going to look at some different passages in the Bible of where people either prayed for a need or they brought a need directly to Jesus, and we're going to look and see how that they had their situations and their prayers and things and the results that they received. And the goal of this message is to move you to a level of faith to check the mail. And I know that still probably throws you off a little bit. It's not about mail money. I know that y'all know that Vita has always, since we've been married, she has always believed that God is going to bless her. Now, I don't think it started off as mail money. She just believed that God was going to bless her. And out of that, years and years ago, she started getting mail money. I mean, what's mail? Mail money is this. Mail money is a check, cash, a card, a benefit, some type of blessing that is unexpected, unexplained, and you just get it in the mail. And it has for years, it just happens that way. Even I've got to jump on the bandwagon, and I've got the mail money a lot of times as well. I mean, literally, we've gotten, over the years, thousands of dollars. So we like to check the mail. But this is not what the message is about. It's not about mail money. I'm using the check in the mail as an analogy, kind of to show you a level of expectancy that comes when we have a prayer that we pray in faith. To go from just having the faith to pray a difficult prayer for a really serious type problem that takes great faith. Because you need to understand this, a lot of people, they don't even have the faith to pray a difficult prayer. They don't have the faith to pray something that seems impossible because they just don't believe anything's going to happen with it, that an answer's going to come. And so I'm telling you that if you at least have the faith to pray the prayer, maybe you're not seeing the answers yet. Maybe you're still waiting on some things. But if you at least have the faith to believe that you can at least ask God for it, then that's the first step. That's a good step. That means you've got at least a measure of faith for something to ask. And we know that it's so important that you ask. In James chapter 4, verse 2, it says that you want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You're jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You want only what will give you pleasure. The scripture is clear that we need to ask God for the things that we want, the things that we need, that we are to ask with the right heart, we're to ask with the right motive. But the important part of this passage that we want to focus on, it says that we don't have what we want because we haven't asked. We are to ask God for our needs. And so that's the very first step of faith that you're going to have, is to ask God for it. Sometimes, though, I think that's the extent of your faith. Christians, that they just have the extent to ask. They don't have the faith to believe that anything's going to take place from it. See, we have faith from time to time to believe that we're going to receive mail money at our house. And it is always a surprise. It's always a joy when you go out there and you come back in and one of you's getting to wait, I got mail money. And I mean, it happens and it's exciting. But it's random. It's not something that every day we're going out there, we're believing, today's the day I got mail money. We just know that it is a method that comes. And it's good. It's good to get it that way, but it's not the same way as to believe that something is coming and to have a level of faith that you're expecting it each time that you open the mailbox. There's a difference in that. I think that random answered prayers are like that sometimes. I think that people believe that God loves them, that God hears them, that God can answer prayers, and every now and then they get an answer to prayer that they truly weren't expecting. They really weren't expecting it, and expecting is the key word here. Expecting means that you can look for the answer. You can look for it to happen with reason, with justification. There's a reason why that you have that expectation, and so you ask God for something, but why should you expect it? Well, you should expect it because I have faith in God. I have faith that God not only hears me, I have faith that God is not only able to do things, but I have faith that God is willing to do the things I ask. I expect for it. I expect it and I look for it, and that's different than being surprised by the answer. So we want to kind of move to that area. If you talk to your bank and your bank said, hey, listen, man, we looked at your account and we overcharged you and we're going to be sending you a refund. Or perhaps you needed a loan and you went to your bank officer and said, I need to borrow such and such money for a project I'm doing. And he says, okay, I'm going to mail you a check. Either way, whatever the reason is, if the bank says they are mailing you a check, you would go out every day to your post office, to your mailbox, open that up, and you are expecting something. You are expecting a check to come from the bank. If they called and said they're mailing it, you're looking for it. If it didn't come that first day, you're just believing there's a delay there, but you know that it's coming. You're expecting it. And that's the level of faith we want to get into our prayers, that when we ask God for something with the right heart, the right motive, something that His Word declares to us that we know that we should be able to believe for, we should pray, ask, and expect it. We should be expecting it. Tuesday night prayer, I pray for things with the church and about the church and stuff. And sometimes I think Tuesday night I was just aware, I'm praying, but on Sunday I'm not expecting it. I'm hoping, but I'm not expecting it. And so God's really speaking to me. So you're saying, you're preaching to yourself today, aren't you? Well, I've already preached to myself. Now I'm sharing it with y'all. I want to move from just the believing that God can to expect it. I don't want it to be a surprise. I want the surprise to be, what will happen? What's going on with that? See, your faith is not believing that it will happen, but it's going to the place where you believe that it's done. So we're going to look at 3 different passages. We're going to look at 3 different places where the answer came, and each of the 3 have something different about them, but it's going to help you, I think, to understand some stuff and to move you a little bit in your level of faith. First, we're going to look at the story in Acts chapter 12 of Peter when he was thrown into prison. Now, this is a lot of scriptures. This is 16 scriptures here. We're going to begin in verse 1. It says, about that time, King Herod Agrippa began to persecute some believers in the church. He had the apostle James, John's brother, killed with the sword. When Herod saw how much that this pleased the Jewish people, he also arrested Peter. This took place during the Passover celebration. Then he imprisoned him, placing him under the guard of 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring Peter out for public trial after the Passover. But while Peter was in prison, the church prayed very earnestly for him. Verse 5 is important there. The night before Peter was to be placed on trial, he was asleep, fastened with 2 chains between 2 soldiers. Others stood guard at the prison gate. Suddenly there was a bright light in the cell, and the angel of the Lord stood before Peter. The angel struck him on the side and awakened him and said, quick, get up. And the chains fell off his wrist. Then the angel told him, get dressed and put on your sandals. And he did. Now put on your coat and follow me, the angel ordered. So Peter left the cell, following the angel. But all the time he thought it was a vision. He didn't realize it was actually happening. They passed the 1st and 2nd guard posts and came to the iron gate leading to the city, and this opened for them all by itself. So they passed through and started walking down the street. Then the angel suddenly left him. Peter finally came to his senses. It's really true, he said. The Lord has sent His angel and saved me from Herod and from what the Jewish leaders had planned to do to me. When he realized this, he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark, where many were gathered for prayer. He knocked at the door in the gate, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to open it. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that instead of opening the door, she ran back inside and told everyone, Peter is standing at the door. You're out of your mind, they said. But when she insisted, they decided it must be his angel. Meanwhile, Peter continued knocking, and when they finally opened the door and saw him, they were amazed. So Peter was in jail. He's sitting there, he's chained up. He's there, and an angel appears before him. And out of that moment, the angel leads him out past all the guards, past the guard posts, through the gates. He finds himself in the city. The angel has now just kind of disappeared. And he goes to Mary's house. This is where the church in verse 5 was earnestly praying for Peter. He goes to that door and he knocks on it. And Rhoda, she's happy. So exuberant, she forgets to let him in and goes and tells everybody else about it. But I tell you what, listen, one of the things that I think about this is that God answered the prayer so quickly. So quickly, as the church was earnestly praying. Remember, we read this and we think about it. This is a very serious moment because James, the brother of John, had been put to death by the sword. Peter is in prison, and without a doubt, he is going to be killed. It is a very dire moment. It's a very dangerous situation. King Herod Agrippa was ready to do the same thing to Peter. They prayed, and very quickly, God answered. Can I tell you something? God can answer quicker than you can imagine. Say, well, I like this sermon because it seems like it's always reverse of this. Well, I just want you to know something, that God can answer quicker. God is aware of what the timing is that is taking place in your life, in your moments. So you may be praying, and I'm going to tell you something. If you're praying, you need to be expecting the answer. If you're one of those people that you're praying, but you don't believe God's going to answer quickly, and so you're just kind of saying the prayer, wait until you get down the day that God's going to answer, you are not praying that prayer expecting. You're thinking sometime. God can, God will, maybe we'll have His favor, it'll happen, but you're not expecting the answer. So I want you to understand you need to begin to pray because God just might blow you away with the speed of His response. The times that it's taken longer, it may be because of your lack of faith on these things. It's okay to expect a prayer and answer quickly. I can't tell you how many times that I have a concern, and Vita's in here, not in children's church, so I don't like to say good things like this, but I will. I can't tell you how many times I come out of the office and I come into the living room. And I don't share with Vita all the problems of business when there's struggles, when there's difficulties, because that's my business. I want her to have peace and not worry about it. And she does. She just has trust God for everything. And I walk in, I'll say, Peter. I walk in, I'll say, Vita, I said, listen, you just need to know. And then I'll lay it out. It kind of aggravates me a little bit because I lay it out for her. Here's the situation. And her response is, well, you know God's got this. He'll answer. He always does. There is no concern for my feelings. It's just, God's got this. And I am not kidding you. I cannot tell you how many times within 10 to 15 minutes my phone rings and the answer's there. I mean, it happens all the time, doesn't it? It does. God can answer very, very quickly. And let me tell you, some of the times we're at the deadline. But God knows these things and stuff. And so, I love the fact that I have a faith-filled wife that believes for things more than just mail money. But you know what? If the situation had to be resolved and God sent us mail money, we know it would happen that way. But so sometimes God answers quicker than you would assume. Sometimes, though, the answer's not too fast. Sometimes it seems like God's answer is taking forever. The situation in your life, and it becomes hard to remain faithful. It seems like you're praying over and over and over and asking God to change someone, to change a situation, to repair something, to heal something, to restore something, to come through. And it just seems like you're just not getting the answer. Sometimes it seems like maybe it's even too late. We're going to look at a story of Jairus in Mark chapter 5, beginning in verse 21. So Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then the leader of a local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her and heal her so she can live. And Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. Now we're going to stop right there. Crowding around him. It is here at this moment, if we kept reading, this is where the woman with the issue of blood comes in. This is where the woman presses through the crowd and touches the hem of the garment, and she receives her healing. But it's not about her right now. This is about Jairus, and he needs Jesus. He's praying. He's asking. His daughter is not just a little sick. It's a dire situation, and Jesus needs to come very, very quickly. He knows that Jesus is aware of the problem because he told Jesus about it. He knows that Jesus is willing to do something because Jesus was on his way. He was coming. And then the woman with the issue of blood delayed Jesus from getting there. Now let me just tell you something. Jesus didn't forget about the need. He knew the woman with the issue of blood. He knew what was taking place. He knew that Jairus' daughter was going to die. He had other plans. But for Jairus, you've got to stay in his moment, because this is about the person in need. This is about you. Jairus didn't understand, with his daughter breathing her last, why would you not come? You know, it had to be frustrating. It had to be a little bit aggravating. Why can't you come back to her? She's been this way for 12 years, you know. She'll be okay for another hour. But while he's there and Jesus is doing all this and ministering, the messengers come from the house and they tell Jairus, don't bother the teacher. It's too late. Your daughter has passed away. Let me just tell you something. How many times does the enemy come to you while you are praying and asking and believing for a need to be met, and he tells you it's pointless? He tells you it's too big, or Jesus doesn't care about it, or it's just the will of God that you suffer this way. And the enemy tries as hard as he can to squash your faith over and over and over, to convince you it's too late, to get you. Let me tell you what, to get you to quit believing, to get you to quit praying. Quit trying to get Jesus on the scene. That's what was happening with Jairus here. The enemy was trying to get him, look, just leave him alone. Daughter's dead, it's over with. But look at what Jesus did down in verse 35. It said, while he's still speaking to her, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. They told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now. But Jesus overheard them and said to Jairus, don't be afraid. Just have faith. Man, today I think some of you need that verse 36. That Jesus is trying to tell you, man, don't be afraid. Don't give up. Don't quit. Just have faith. Then Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him. Now this is key, the rest of the story. Wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw much commotion, weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead. She's only asleep. And the crowd laughed at him. But he made them all leave. And he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying, holding her hand. And he said to her, Talitha cum, which means little girl, get up. And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. They were overwhelmed and totally amazed. Jesus told Jairus not to be afraid. Told him to just have faith. And at that point, this is so important, at that point, Jesus made the crowd to stop following. He just took Peter, James, and John with him. What's the significance? He took men of faith with him. When he got to the house and the crowds were there, it says when he went inside and the crowds were there, and they were weeping and wailing, Jesus said, I don't know what your problem is, she's not dead. And they laughed at him. He made them leave the house. He made all of the people of doubt leave the place. I want you to understand, and this may be what you need to hear today, who you surround yourself with your need matters. Who you listen to, who you try and share the problem with makes a difference. Jesus understood the importance of faith. I'm going to tell you, if you got a problem, you got a problem with its finances, health, marriage, whatever it is, and you're talking to people that you know that they're not people of faith. I don't mean that they don't believe in God or they don't believe God can. But if they're not going to agree with you and expect God to, how do I know the difference? Well, when you're talking to someone about a need and every piece of advice and counsel they give you as far as the need continuing, for how to handle the need, for how to handle the problem, for how to just live through it and all that, and there's no measure of faith for a better day, a new day, you know, leave your wife just the way she is. I know you prayed for her, but just leave her. You shouldn't be miserable. Or your husband, or sever this relationship, or quit this job because your boss is this. Whatever it is, and you're trying to share with them on stuff, and they don't have the faith that you need. You need to surround yourself with people of faith that you share that need, that they want to grab you by the hand. They want to pray with you. They want to believe with you. They want to be a part of the miracle. They want to be a part of seeing when the prayer happens, when God comes on the scene, even though it looks like it's too late, that the daughter's dead. Jesus has another plan. Jesus wasn't looking just to heal a girl. He was looking to raise her from the dead. Jesus wants to exceed your heart's desires. He wants to rescue and resurrect our faith today. So no matter how long it seems to be, listen to me, surround yourself with people of faith, with people who will believe it. Where can I go? Tuesday night prayer. Man, we people of faith that will expect God to do something. You got a place to go. It may just be that you've got friends that don't go to church, or friends that are not faithful to God, friends that you know that God's not first. You might need to just quit sharing. I'm not telling you to not be friends with them. I'm telling you, quit sharing your problems and things that you're praying of faith with them. Because when they can't build your faith up, they're going to tear your faith down without you realizing it. They're going to plant seeds of doubt, and you don't need that when you're looking for something. You say, well, that's not true. It's what Jesus needed. He could have said, hey, okay, you want to laugh? Now come in the room with me. Look at this. He didn't do that. He didn't want any doubt to be in that house. Okay, let's go to one more story. 2 Kings chapter 20, looking at verse 1 through 6. It says, about that time Hezekiah became deathly ill, and the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, went to visit him, and he gave the king this message. This is what the Lord says. Set your affairs in order, for you are going to die. You will not recover from this illness. When Hezekiah heard this, he turned his face to the wall and he prayed to the Lord. Remember, O Lord, how I have always been faithful to you, have served you single-mindedly, always doing what pleases you. Then he broke down and he wept bitterly. But before Isaiah had left the middle courtyard, another quick answer, this message came to him from the Lord. Go back to Hezekiah, the leader of my people. Tell him, this is what the Lord, the God of your ancestor David says. I have heard your prayer, seen your tears. I will heal you. And 3 days from now, you'll get out of the bed and go to the temple of the Lord. I will add 15 years to your life. I will rescue you and the city from the king of Assyria. I will defend this city for my own honor and for the sake of my servant David. First thing you need to know is that he got this message that he was going to die from a very reliable source. He got it from the prophet Isaiah. King Hezekiah knew that it was true. He knew it was the coming days was going to be death for him. He knew that God had spoke that and it was true. Hezekiah didn't get mad. He didn't get mad at God. He didn't get bitter with God. He didn't yell at him. He did something that he could do because of the life choices he had previously made. He reminded God of how faithful his life was. He reminded God of how single-minded and single-hearted his life was. How that he put him first. How fervent he was in trying to serve God first and foremost. How trying to live a life that would please God. That's what he did. He reminded him of that. He reminded God of how God was number one in his life in all areas. Can you do that? Can you remind God of how faithful that you have been? Can you tell God, Lord, you know that you have always been first. Lord, you know that you are always first and foremost on my life. You know that my life is surrendered to you. You know that I want to live by your word, by your commandments, by your will. Lord, you see that I have done that. I have put you first. Can you remind God like Hezekiah did? Hezekiah loved God with his whole heart and his whole life. Can you say that? That's a question for you to answer to yourself. And because of his relationship with God, he was able to get a different result. He was able to have the outcome of his life changed. He received a word from Isaiah about death coming, and it wasn't punishment. It wasn't because Hezekiah had done bad, because we already know God changed this plan on his life because he had done great, because Hezekiah had been first. In fact, just before this message had came to Isaiah, just previously, if you go to the chapter before this, the Assyrian warriors were facing Hezekiah and his people, and God answered the prayer, and God took care of 185,000 Assyrian warriors to give him relief. God wasn't out to destroy him. God was giving him a heads up. Time's up. Get your things in order. And yet Hezekiah was able to change some things because how he had lived. And this is important. He is able to change some things because how he had lived. Not a promise to God of how he would change and live. It's how he had lived. It's such a better place to be in such a better place to be in, to sit there and be able to look at God, you know I've been faithful. Then God, you know I will be faithful. See, God responds to us when we remain in relationship with Him. Let's just bow our heads this morning. No matter where you are today, whether you need a quick answer, whether it seems like the answer that you've been praying for is just never coming, it may just feel like in your life that the way things are, God, I need to change a plan. I need the way that you changed Hezekiah's plan for his life. I need a plan, Lord. I need to change. I need something that speaks life to me. The answer, the only answer, is going to come from your encounter with God. You need to be right. You need to put God first. You need to pray with faith in God. So much that you have an expectancy for the answer is coming. Where you cannot wait to check the mail. You cannot wait to check life. You can't wait for the knock on the door, the next phone call, the next day at work, the next word out of someone in your relationship's mouth. Because you are not just hoping, but you are expecting God to come on the scene. And no one's looking around today, and I'm not going to call you forward for this. I just want to... Is there something in your life you really do need God to help you with? Something you've been praying about? Just put your hand up, back down. Just so we can see, yeah. Okay. Well, this morning I'm going to give you an opportunity.